what is your latest reaction to the development for as the world turns, Pete Alonso?
Kind of some sadness is that I feel a little, okay, this is not reporting, this is my interpretation of how the various reports have gone. I feel like Pete ends up back on the Mets. The Mets could use a little offense. When you look at their lineup, it looks a little thin, it looks a little power hungry. The comments from players like Soto at his signing press conference seem to indicate, if not an expectation, certainly a hope that they will do a little bit to supplement the lineup. And they just don't have a lot of sort of positional flexibility in terms of where they could get that offense other than at first base. So Pete makes a lot of sense. There doesn't seem to be a ton of competition for Pete Alonso out there. So hopefully that means they bring him back at a price that they feel comfortable with. But I'm a little bit sad because it feels like there's that if Pete Alonso comes back to Queens, both sides will be disappointed in some ways. Certainly, the way that the offseason has gone thus far, we know certainly that Pete is not getting the number he wants in terms of just dollars, years, whatever. His market is not what he hoped it would be, whether that's a misrepresentation from Scott Boras or simply the way that we're evaluating slugging first baseman. Pete's going to end up disappointed. And I would hate for him to end up disappointed and for the Mets to also sort of end up disappointed in having almost to bring him back, which they don't have to do if they don't want. But at some point, it does become a situation where I guess, his price comes down enough. I hope that if they do bring him back, that it feels more like a celebration and less like, oh no, here we are. We looked around and no one else wanted to go home with us, so we'll just couple back up.
Well, it's been a weird couple of weeks, and I'm with you because a few weeks ago, I'm like, all right, he's not coming back. The report comes out. Cohen is at the Fan Fest the other day, and now it feels like I'm doing an about face where Alonso's still out there. The Mets need a power bat, and maybe they find a way to come to a deal.
I just want to say, and Scott, you were with me when we had that episode. I always thought he was coming back just because it felt like.
Oh, you doubled down on it. Good for you.
I'm doubling down on it because it felt like the Mets were in negotiating mode. The things they were saying felt like negotiation tactics and not like truly like we have somewhere else to look tactics.
Zach, talk me through this. You've been in these front office negotiations as far as weighing the pros and cons of bringing a particular player back. They know everything there is to know about Pete Alonso because they've had him the last couple of years. There are obviously key statistics that members of a front office are going to look at and say, we value this, we need this. You've been in these meetings, you've been in these sort of battles. What are the key negotiations as far as, hey, statistically speaking, we need this, we need that? What's of the utmost priority?
Well, you have to keep in mind a front office is always trying to predict the future of what a player is going to do once they sign him. And so what you look for in a hitter is you want to see the two main things that a hitter does, right? Like the swing decisions that they make and then what happens when they swing the bat. And that's contact and damage when they swing the bat. So, if you look at the first few indicators here, basically they're telling the same story. He's not swinging as frequently as he used to, both in and out of the zone. And you might say, hey, well, that's good. He's not chasing pitches. Well, your chase rate would be 0 if you stood there with the bat on your shoulder the whole time. So what it tells me is a story of a passive hitter these last couple years. And he's not doing as much damage on balls in the heart of the plate because he's just not being aggressive in the zone. And what that leads to is way more two-strike counts than he's ever had, almost 100 more than 4 years ago. Each year it's gone up. And that leads to more breaking balls to try to put him away. And he's just not getting pitches that he can drive. He needs to hunt fastballs and get after it in the zone. And so maybe the thing is that an approach choice he's making? Or is that an indicator that he's late on making these decisions and that his reaction time has slowed over time? I don't know. I mean, Pete's always had incredible ability to turn his hips and create a lot of power from that. And teams have sophisticated biomechanical data that they're looking at to figure out, is that something that's changed over time? And so I don't have access to that information, but that's something to look at. And then on the defensive end, he's one of the worst in the metrics. Now, he's really good at picking it at first, but you have to be all-time elite to make up for the lack of range that he has and the weak arm that he has.
Let's make the call to the bullpen. We welcome in the lefty, Jerry Blevins. Okay, Jerry, Pete Alonso's back as a Met. It's going to be a little awkward. It's going to be a little weird because of what has transpired throughout this offseason. Can you see a potential impact on the clubhouse here as a whole?
I mean, there's potential for it. When you come in, Pete's been basically the face of the Mets for his entire career. He was like the superstar. Then they signed Francisco Lindor. It felt like a 1A, 1B thing. Lindor took off last year. They re-signed Nemo, who's that veteran voice. And then you bring in a superstar like Juan Soto, and then you have your ego hit a little bit in free agency. To come back kind of hat in hand a little bit, I think could potentially be a little bit awkward. But if the Mets re-sign it, it'll be open arms. Pete Alonso is a chance to be the home run king for the New York Mets. He's a pro with the media. That is the only place where it would be a little bit awkward, maybe a first few days in spring training. But outside of that, I expect guys to move forward. The clubhouse is what it is. There's not going to be any tension. And if Pete Alonso comes back, I expect him to be a pro, put his hard hat on, and go to work.